Millions of Californians could lose their homes soon, and it might not stop there. This big change is happening because of new rules that favor renters over landlords. You might have heard about the National Bill of Rights for renters or discussions about rent control across the country. This is a big deal, and it could affect you too. There's this crazy story happening in Beverly Hills that I think is just the beginning of a much bigger problem. It's all over the news right now. Basically, there's this really expensive house, worth millions, and some people just moved in without permission. They changed the locks, and now they're renting it out for a huge amount of money each month. Can you believe it? They're making around $360,000 a year tax-free. And the worst part? The law won't kick them out. Instead, the state is paying for their taxes and utilities because they say it's illegal to cut off utilities for squatters. It's a big mess, and it's happening because of new laws that give squatters more rights as tenants. The situation we're seeing between landlords and tenants is making the gap between the rich and the poor even wider. Tenants are mad because rent is too high, and landlords are frustrated because they have to pay a lot for things like insurance, taxes, and mortgages. It's tough for both sides. But look at what's happening now, it's getting crazier. That's why I think over 1 million people might lose their homes in California. According to a reliable source from the California government's website, more than 65 areas in California have already put rules in place to encourage or make it necessary for buildings to switch to electricity. Plus, the California Air Resources Board has agreed on a plan to stop the sale of gas-powered heating and water systems across the state. If you check out the website, you'll see it's true. Starting this year, you won't be able to buy gas heating or water systems in California anymore. So, what does this mean? Well, if your house isn't set up for electricity, you'll have a hard time getting energy. This is going to push property owners to make upgrades to their homes. Imagine you're a landlord, and you've owned a property for a while, thinking of renting it out in a high-rent area like Los Angeles. You've been doing well with it until now. Suddenly, you're hit with these new rules about switching to electricity and all these extra protections for tenants. It's tough. Many landlords won't have many choices. They might have to sell their properties. And now, there's talk about changing laws that could put a cap on how much rent they can charge, even for single-family homes and condos. If a tenant moves out, landlords might not be able to raise the rent, no matter how much they spend on fixing up the place. So, while tenants might benefit in the short term, landlords are facing higher costs for electricity, insurance, and taxes. It's a big problem brewing in California. But where there are problems, there are also opportunities. Some big investors will likely find ways to make money from these changes. It happens every time. In the midst of all this, homeowners in California are struggling to find insurance, with companies pulling out and rates shooting up. Even car insurance is getting more expensive. And tenants? Well, they're getting more legal protections like access to free lawyers and lower upfront costs when renting. It's a lot to take in, but it's clear that things are changing fast in California. It's a bit of a double-edged sword for landlords. On one hand, they're responsible for fixing any problems with their properties. On the other hand, new laws are making it harder for them to evict tenants without a good reason. And then there's this big project from Karen Bass and the White House called the All-In Project, aiming to cut homelessness by 25% by 2025. But how can they achieve that if they keep allowing evictions and limiting landlords' rights to manage their properties? It's a tough balance. Landlords are facing higher costs to maintain their properties while the rules are tightening up on them. This could widen the gap between those who own property and those who don't. So, it's crucial to position yourself wisely in this changing landscape. Some small landlords are feeling the squeeze, even though they believe in rent control to protect families from big rent hikes. It's a complex situation with no easy solutions. In the effort to prevent homelessness, the city and county have put in place several measures that are making it extremely challenging for small landlords to operate. Unfortunately, these measures are expected to ultimately harm vulnerable tenants. For instance, in 2023, several years into the crisis when the unemployment rate was remarkably low and wages were rising, landlords were still told they couldn't increase rents. This hit small landlords hard, like myself, as we saw all our costs rising significantly. It's quite evident what's happening in Los Angeles. 3 years of an eviction moratorium meant tenants didn't have to pay rent during this time. I believe that 2024 and 2025 will be very different from the boom years of 2020 to 2022. Back then, everyone was rushing into real estate, whether as Airbnb investors, house flippers, or syndicators. It seemed like a surefire way to make money. But now, things are changing. With higher interest rates, increased property costs, and wages not keeping up, people might start to shy away from real estate. It's like in a movie where there's a fire and everyone rushes for the exit. You need to prepare yourself, have cash on hand, good credit, and be ready to invest in real assets. In times like these, some will still make money, but you need to understand the new rules of the game. The world is moving fast, and it's crucial to adapt. It's pretty wild how quickly things are changing. There might be a big chance waiting for you in your current business, or if you're thinking about starting a new one. With all the changes happening in society, lots of folks will find ways to make the most of it.